If you're working for a company and you've got a problem with your manager or maybe with a coworker, and you're thinking, hey, I'm just going to go to HR and HR is going to help me. They'll take care of this problem. They'll clean it up for me and I won't have to worry about it. If you're thinking about doing that, I'd ask you to also think about the result of two different surveys that were done. What they did is they surveyed hundreds of employees, and what they found was that many employees consider HR more of a threat than a help, and they cited a number of reasons that employees felt this way. So if you're thinking about going to HR, and especially if you're over 50 and you're thinking about going to HR to resolve a problem, I'd ask you to think twice. And I'm going to tell you why. And that, my friends, that's up next right here on Over 50 TV. Welcome back to Over 50 TV. My name is Lou Reyes. And before the break, I said I would tell you why people over 50 should avoid HR. And I'm going to draw from some studies that were done, and I'm also going to draw from some statistics that show how difficult it is for people over 50 to find a job, find a new job once they lose their current position. But let's talk about the study. And the studies that were done by two different organizations that actually provide services, and both organizations came up with their survey results came up with pretty much the same conclusion. What they say is 35% of workers don't trust HR. And let me read some of the other statistics here, some of the other numbers. What they said is 31% of workers, people who go to HR to resolve a problem, 31% fear retaliation. They also say that 23% of workers say they've witnessed or experienced poor HR, hurtful management, or discrimination. And they say 38% of employees do not feel that HR equally enforces company policy across all employees. And 18% of them, they say managers get special treatment. So when you hear these statistics and you see that HR, great percentage of the issues that they resolve or that you think they're going to resolve are not resolved. And oftentimes, if you could feel retaliation, or maybe even you see that management gets the benefit of the doubt, and of course the employee is the person who's going to be left out. So when I see these numbers, the first conclusion you've got to come up with is that's a department I probably want to avoid. We've produced two different videos about HR here on Over 50 TV. One video got over 195,000 views. It got over 1,400 comments. And I will tell you that probably 95% or more of those comments, and it could be a lot higher than 95, maybe it's 99% of those comments, though, of those comments were negative about HR. And they were basically people just saying, hey, I've been to HR, I've had them resolve issues, or I've seen problems with HR over the course of years. And when all this data comes in and all these negative comments come in about HR, the reputation that HR has is a department that could be more of a threat than a help. I think that that reputation seems to me to be well deserved, and especially when you're hearing workers, over hundreds, thousands of workers, chiming in and saying, "Yeah, I've seen this happen." So when you see all of these, you hear about all these workers complaining about HR. You yourself may have witnessed a problem with HR or tried to go to HR to resolve a problem. When you see all this stuff and you know that HR probably isn't going to help you, then why would you go to that department? You know you can't trust them. It's almost like you have a girlfriend. Maybe when you're younger, you have a girlfriend and you trust them, and then they betray your trust, and all of a sudden you're looking at it going, you know what, I'm never going to trust you again. And if you see this at HR, it's easy to understand why people would feel that same way. It's like, I'm never going to trust you again. So you may be wondering, why is Lou saying, especially in the beginning of this video, why is Lou saying workers over 50 should avoid HR? And I emphasize avoid HR at all costs. You may be thinking, maybe everybody should avoid HR. Well, the reason I'm saying that workers over 50, especially workers over 50, should avoid HR, it's based on some other data that I've read and I understand, and maybe you yourself have seen some of the same data. Let me read this to you. It says research shows that it's often harder for older workers to secure new jobs. One 2020 study published by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that workers over the age of 40 are only about half as likely to get a new job offer as younger workers if employers know their age. So, right there, what it says, what we know, what we believe based on experience, is that it is more difficult for older workers to get a job. Now, let me read something else to you here. It says, for the first time in nearly 50 years, people over the age of 55 have lost jobs at a higher rate than their younger peers. It says, during the first 6 months of the COVID-19 pandemic, workers aged 55 and older were 17% more likely to lose their jobs than employees who were just a few years younger. So you put both of these statistics together. There's plenty of other data out there. I mentioned that. Again, you probably have seen that yourself. So you look at this data and you know that if you're older, if you're an older worker, you're going to have a more difficult time finding a new job. So to me, yeah, maybe most people, based on the data, the research that we've shown, and by the way, I'll put links in all this data in the description box. You can check it out. But yeah, maybe, just maybe, everyone should avoid HR based on all this information. But my conclusion is that workers over 50, because you have a harder, more difficult time to find a job, just avoid HR completely. Why take a chance of retaliation? Why take a chance that the HR department is going to side with your manager over you? It could cause you frustration. At the worst, maybe the worst anyway, you could lose your job. It's not worth going to HR based on the data that we've seen and the conclusion that we know. But I speak specifically for workers over 50 because what we see is they have a harder time, a much harder time finding a new job. So now some of you might be saying, well, how can I avoid HR? They're prevalent, they're always around. How can I avoid HR? And I'm going to say, you know what? Don't rock the boat. Keep your head down and just don't rock the boat and do your job. But I'm also going to say this. I'd rock myself out of that company. If that's a problem, if you have a problem and you know it's not going to be resolved, I would plan, and I would plan my exit. I'd be looking to get out of that place. And then when you're ready to go, you give your notice, you give your 2 weeks notice if that's what you decide to do. And I've got a video that talks about giving a 2 week notice. But you give your 2 week notice, your letter of resignation, and you exit. So I'm not saying live in fear, and I'm not saying that you got to be afraid of HR. I'm only saying be smart about it. I'm saying rock your way out of there. Don't rock that boat. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. But get yourself out of that situation. So I'm hoping that I don't get emails or messages rather, and I get emails too, plenty of those. But I'm hoping that people aren't saying, well, Lou, you're just basically saying it's okay to live in fear. I'm not saying live in fear. I'm saying get out of there, leave. Yeah, the stats show it's more difficult for us to find people like you and me who are older. It's difficult, more challenging to find a new job. But you know what? You can do a couple things. You can, while you're there, you can spend your spare time to learn a new high income skill to make yourself way more marketable. That's something that you can do if you really want to. Or you can start a side hustle, a side business, and I've got videos on side hustles. You can start a side hustle, and you build that side hustle up over time, and eventually you're making the money that you need so you can just say adios to that HR person, to the manager, or whoever it is. So I stress, to me anyway, I'm stressing, I'm not saying live in fear. I'm not saying you got to stay there. I'm not saying keep your head down because you got to worry. I'm saying no, plan your exit, get out of there. And that, to me, my friends, is about the best advice I could give you. So that's all I've got for you today, folks. If you have any questions, please go ahead, put them in the comment box. Also, as I mentioned, I will put links to this, all the information, so you can see it. I like to do that just so that you have it in case you have any questions. But please, as I mentioned, just send me your messages. I'd be happy to get to them as fast as I possibly can. And before I do forget, I'm going to ask you to subscribe to Over 50 TV. It's easy to do, but if you subscribe, you also got to hit that little bell, because if you don't hit that little bell, you're not going to be notified whenever we upload a new video to YouTube, or really even to any of the other platforms that we're using. Well, that's all I got for you today. And if you have any questions, get them to me. But as I always say, have a great day, everybody.